Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode number 293 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today, I have the privilege to introduce you to Britt. Britt is Percy's mom, and you will hear shortly that I know her well because of our Starlight support groups. So if you are interested in joining one of our Starlight support groups, the next sessions won't be starting until fall, but think about it. Go to starlightmen.org and find out more information on how you might be a part of one of our virtual support groups. They are really growing, and I just think they are really amazing, as you'll hear us talk a little bit more about in the episode. So my least favorite part of doing the podcast is asking for any sort of financial contributions from people. I just don't feel great doing it, but I realize that I probably should a little more than I do. So that being said, I had a mom reach out who is going to be interviewed shortly, and she asked me, how much does it cost to produce one full episode of the podcast? And I figured it out with the editor and the videographer and the other stuff that I pay for. Each episode costs about $125. And she wrote back that she wanted to donate $125 to cover the cost of the episode that she did. So I started thinking that was maybe something that I should say to other people, because maybe other people would want to make $125 donation in their child's name. As you will hear also on this episode, this week, Andy would be turning 21 years old. So I will probably do a little social media post kind of asking for some contributions. And I think I will ask if people are willing to give $125 to sponsor one episode of the Always Andy's Mom podcast, because I do feel like is something that Andy and I can still do together, and it's a pretty precious thing. So if you feel drawn to do that and you want to send that money in honor of your child, I would really appreciate it. Obviously, you can do that by going to the website, andysmom.com, and then click on the donate page, and then that'll bring you to where you can make a donation. So if you feel like you want to do that for Andy's birthday or your child's birthday or just in your child's memory, I'd be grateful. Right now, though, I just want you to sit back and enjoy listening to Britt, Percy's mom. Thank you so much, Britt, for coming on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Marcy.
Oh my gosh, I know most of you aren't watching video, but if you were watching video, you would see that Britt and I are really smiling quite big. This is exciting for us because I've gotten to know Britt pretty well through our grief support group that I facilitate through Starlight Ministries. And, Britt just decided it was time. It was time to share Percy's story with more than just the support group. It was time to share it with everybody out there. And we're making sure to release this around a pretty special day, right?
That's right. It'll be released the day before Percy's what should be his 6th birthday.
Oh, I love that. I love when we can make something really special. So what's funny is this one's been scheduled way out. Like, I had all sorts of blank weeks before Percy's mom was listed as that day, and I knew it was going to happen. And it's kind of cool for me too, because that this is very close to Andy's birthday too. So
yeah, their birthdays were only a few days apart.
I know. So it made me extra happy when you wanted that week, because this is a very big week for me too, because Andy should be turning 21 this week. So to do this one with you, it felt important to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
because I was doing it with a friend. So,
Thank you so much for letting me have this week.
and you didn't even know that. I just surprised you with that right now. So,
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that's special.
no, it is. It is extra special. But I want you to tell us all about Persy because I've heard some Persy stories and I just can't wait to hear even more. So tell me all about Persy and his personality and just everything about him.
Yay. Okay, I'm so excited to share him with everyone. Percy was our firstborn, and he was an incredibly happy, easy baby. Barely ever cried or fussed. He was just always smiling. We used to call him Happerstancia because he always had a big, wide open smile. And he stayed that way, as a toddler. He was just so loving, smart, sweet, compliant. I mean, he was still a little wild. I was worried he'd run off in the parking lot, but
Yeah.
he was a he was a sweetheart, and he became a big brother when he was 20 months old
Oh, wow.
and just loved his little brother so much, Kepler. They were best friends. He would just go over and give him little kisses all the time and was so gentle with him. Like, I never had to worry about him being too rough, or he was just a sweet brother. The only thing I really worried about was him stealing his passies and kinda like, going over in the corner and, like, sucking on him real quick while he could. But he was smart, he loved to learn, and he loved singing, he liked to memorize little songs, and he he memorized how to read, like, some books when he was really little, like, just little Brown Bear books and stuff, and he loved to memorize things that had a sequential order.
Okay.
So he got really into letters and numbers. This was just on his own, he could sing his ABCs and recognize all the letters by, like, age 2 because he loved it, and he loved numbers and could count on, and as he got older, he would, obviously it developed more, and he eventually, after he'd mastered the English alphabet, he went ahead and mastered some other alphabets too.
Really? What alphabets did he master?
He learned the Spanish, Greek, he was very into the Greek, the Cyrillic and Coptic alphabets too, which
Oh my goodness.
I had to look up what the Coptic alphabet was. He would find things he was really into his iPad, and so he would find things on YouTube, like videos, and he would just, like, memorize stuff and then regurgitate it, and he could recognize the letters. It was unbelievable. I mean, he
Yeah,
was
what a smart
just
little guy. Because how old was he when he was doing this stuff?
yeah, and he loved it. He found so much joy in it. He was when he learned all those, he was probably 3 to 4.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
late
crazy.
3s.
Uh-huh.
And he was really into Thomas the Train for a while and memorized all those trains. Like, there's hundreds of
Oh, yes.
trains. He knew them by name, color, number, could tell them apart. And with numbers too, he loved Number Blocks. I don't know if you've heard of that show.
I haven't, but okay.
It's really good for teaching number sense. So if anyone has littles out there, recommended. But he could count past 100, and he loved to be cozy. And so Ryan would ask him, like, on a scale from 1 to 100, how cozy do you want to be? And sorry, Ryan's my husband. And he would say, I want to be cozy to 100. And then at one point, Ryan had taught him what a Google was, which is a number with 100 zeros.
Okay.
Because he was like, there's numbers higher than 100, and, was teaching him about that. And so then the next time, he said, how cozy do you want to be? Percy said, I want to be cozy to a Google. So that's what he would always say. And then people would be like, what's a Google? And he'd say, it's a number with 100 zeros. And he just,
Oh, that's so fun.
he loved to, like, apply what he learned, and it was just natural.
What did you do when he wanted to be cozy to Google?
Oh, we would just cozy him up with the blanket,
Yeah? Okay.
get in his little cozy spot on the couch or wherever he was. And
It sort of reminds me of Andy because Andy would climb up, like if Eric and I were in bed or on the couch, he'd always climb up and get himself between us. Okay. And then he'd say, make an Andy sandwich.
oh,
So Eric and I would hug, and we were the pieces of the bread, and Andy was the sandwich. So you saying cozy to a Google made me think of the Andy sandwich.
and actually that's funny because when Percy was first born, my husband and I used to say, so I'm half Cuban, and so we would say it in Spanish, but we would say sandwiche de Percy tico, and we would do like a little Percy sandwich, and we'd each kiss a cheek so that he'd be, we'd do a
Yeah.
little kiss sandwich.
That's
So
so
that's so
funny.
funny.
That is
Oh my
really
gosh.
cool.
Our boys.
I know, our sweet boys. Even though they were so far apart in age, I know, but I still think back to the Andy sandwich and miss the Andy sandwiches.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
neither one of the other kids ever wanted anything like that. I mean, they wouldn't do that.
Right. I was about to say it was like something special about like
Uh-huh.
how loving.
Yeah.
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 And that's the other thing about Percy. He was like the most loving little boy. I mean, I've decided, I've realized in hindsight that God knew in his sovereignty, he knew that Percy was only going to live, 4.5 years, a little less on this earth. And so I feel like he made him special and gave him this special ability, like a capacity for love and an ability to communicate his love to people that was not normal for a 4-year-old. Like most people that develops, as you grow up, and he just had it. He made people feel so special and loved. And even like on his iPad, he found ways to he would send videos and digital art messages and all kinds of things to his family, who he would tell you his whole family was his best friend. And, send videos to his grandmothers all the time, asking them to come over and play. And he was just, I think I mentioned this before in group, but he was like, he had an emotional depth too that was beyond his years, that like you could see that he got it in a way, that 4-year-olds shouldn't.
Yeah.
They just normally don't. And there's a couple anecdotes that I wanted to share. Like there was one time when he was probably 3 that my husband said to him, what makes me special is being your daddy, Percy. And he said like tears started welling up in Percy's eyes. Like it settled on him, and he understood how, I don't know, significant that was and special. And then there was one time I have a little picture on my nightstand of my husband and I when we were dating, and we're kissing in it. And, most 4-year-olds, especially 4-year-old boys, I feel like would be like, ew, yucky, kissing. I mean, that's the reaction I typically get from that picture.
Yeah.
But Percy, one day he said, Mama, that picture makes me cry happy tears. And like he was
Oh.
fully like welling up with tears in his eyes, looking at the picture of us kissing. It was just, he
Oh.
was special, and I know
Yeah.
all our children are special, but there were those gifts God gave him so that he could connect to us, with that little bit of time he had, I think, because his circle was so small, but, he filled it up with
Yeah.
so much love.
I think you're right. I think it's just an extra depth that it seemed like he had, and an extra just emotional understanding, and being able to think of really other people and their perspectives a little bit too, which is outside the norm for that age.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
what a sweet, sweet guy.
Now we have all those precious gifts of all the videos and things he sent us, from his own iPad that he took. And that's just a special gift.
Oh, that is extra special.
Yeah.
So, for all of you over the next few days, if you don't follow me on Instagram and Facebook, you better start, because I can guarantee some of those fun little videos are going to be in the video clips that I do with Britt. So, again, always Andy's mom on social media, and then you get to see all of it. I think
For
those
sure.
videos have been really, really special that Jen has been putting together these last
I
few months.
agree. It just brings the kids to life in a new way that
Uh-huh.
I love looking at their pictures, but seeing their videos is even more cool.
I know, because it just makes them seem. I mean, you just see them alive. You see the life in them. You see the energy. You see the sparkle in the eyes. It's very special.
They were here. They lived. They matter.
Yeah.
Like that's what I think about every time I see their, little videos.
Yeah, for sure. As I'm sitting here, I'm thinking to myself, I probably ought to have Jen put together a little clip sometime with Andy and videos, because I've never done that. It's always been other
That's
kids.
right.
It's never been
I would
mine.
love to see that.
I know.
Even just hearing his voice at the end, I always love that.
Yeah. Well, we probably ought to spend some time talking about what happened to Persy, because that's a pretty significant story as well.
Yeah.
And part of his journey, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when Persy was 2.5, we had just moved to Florida from Georgia. And one day I noticed he had like a lump on his shoulder. And earlier that day, him and his cousin, who's about a year and a half older, had been playing, and his cousin had tried to pick him up, and they kind of fell, and he cried. And, so we just figured he'd gotten hurt. And so took him in to be x-rayed, and they said he had a broken clavicle. So they kind of said, there's nothing you can really do about it. And we just went on. But some more things started to kind of happen. Just like, I had said, Persy was always happy, never cranky, never sick. And he kind of started to be a little crankier sometimes here and there. Like, and complaining more of like maybe tummy pain, like that maybe constipation, just little things like that. And then he fell at school one day, and the teacher said he was acting like his legs hurt. And so my husband took him to the ER. They checked his legs, said they were fine. Also, we had him look at the clavicle at that point because I had noticed that it seemed like it was getting worse to me. Like it was, the bruising was getting almost bigger or darker. It was just scary to look at. And I remember they told my husband that day, like, oh, no, it looks a little worse before it looks better. And that's normal and that's okay. So that weekend, that was Halloween weekend, and Persy was not himself at all. He was very cranky. He cried pretty much the whole time, even when I was holding him, wanted to be held constantly, did not feel well, did not trick or treat, like couldn't play with his cousins. It was terrible. And then like in the next couple of days, he seemed a little bit better. And I kind of just wrote that off as, maybe he had like maybe a low grade fever, but nothing that even really needed Tylenol. I think I probably gave him Tylenol, but I thought maybe he was cutting some molars, like some 2-year-old molars. And I just, we kept kind of writing things off, but things seemed to keep happening. So then one morning he woke up and he had a black eye. And obviously that was very concerning.
Yeah.
Because nothing had happened. He had gone to bed fine and just woke up with a black eye. I started thinking, like, did he like bang himself with his sunglasses really hard? Like, and I didn't notice, and the bruise just took a while to show. Like, I don't know. I couldn't figure out what was going on. But obviously took him to the pediatrician again. We'd been several times by now. And my husband also thought that his eye was protruding a little bit. And so, I took him in, asked him about the eye, the clavicle, everything. With the eye, he'd kind of said, oh, he probably just got hurt. And, I tried to tell him he didn't get hurt. I know he didn't get hurt. He's always with me or at school, and he just didn't. So there was no explanation. But he said it wasn't protruding. He did say, I think he referred us to an orthopedist at that point because of the clavicle. He said there might be something else. Like, I don't know, maybe he thought there was another break, or I don't know what he thought. So referred us to the orthopedist and then sent us on. And I remember telling my husband, what he said about the protruding eye, and he was like, but it, like, we were both like, no, but it is, like, something isn't right.
Yeah.
And we'd kind of gotten to the point where my husband was saying, like, if all of these things are related, this is something really bad.
Yeah.
But hopefully they're not related, and this is just some weird coincidences. Things are happening.
Yeah.
But we were starting to get a little bit more worried.
Yeah.
And at this point, it was almost Thanksgiving. So I sent Persy to school on a Friday. It was supposed to be, went to like a little church preschool. It was supposed to be their little performance. And we were going to go and watch him and then go to his orthopedist appointment later that day. Well, the teachers called me like right after I dropped him off pretty much and said, Persy came in and just laid down on the floor and went to sleep. Like, something is wrong. Like, it. You've been saying it. You need to trust your gut. We know something's wrong. This isn't normal. Like, you need to take him, like, just advocate for him. Don't let the doctors tell you no. Like, don't take no for an answer.
Right.
So, of course, we were going to do that anyway at that point. But I was so grateful for them because, I mean, I kept thinking they're going to think I'm like beating my child. I don't know what they must think because he's coming in every day with bruises with no explanation. And so we went and picked him up, went to the orthopedist. Of course, we had the baby with us. We had his little brother who was about 9 months old at this point. And the orthopedist x-rayed it again and like right away said there was a growth and y'all need to go to Children's. So we immediately went to the hospital, and my parents happened to be driving into town for Thanksgiving. And so they came and just like picked up the baby from outside the hospital from my husband while I was in with Persy. And went to our house, which they had never been to before because we just moved and had to figure it out with the baby. And we were admitted that night. Actually, that night, an oncologist came down to the ER and told us that Persy had one of likely 2 types of pediatric cancer. I can't even remember what the other one was that he told us it might be, but they were pretty sure. And I think within 24 hours, he was diagnosed with stage 4 high-risk neuroblastoma, which is a pretty common pediatric cancer. It's a bad one.
It is.
None of them are good, but it's a really bad one. And typically, kids only 6 and under get it. And when it presents, when you find it, it typically is stage 4 and high risk. That's uncommon.
You very, very rarely catch that before it's stage 4 and kind of spread all over. It's just so heartbreaking. It's just not one that you can do a screening for and pick up early.
Right. Yeah. And he'd been having symptoms for maybe a month. So it's like, they said if we'd gotten him in there a month before, it wouldn't have made a difference in terms of, you could see how quickly it was progressing with him waking up with a black eye one day.
Yeah.
Right. From one day to the next, no sign. And then, so obviously that was metastasized tumor. And then the clavicle, same thing. It was everywhere.
Yeah.
For neuroblastoma, they measure it on a Curie score. They call it a Curie score. They do an MIBG scan, which is where they bind like a radioactive iodine to a molecule that is absorbed by the cancer. And so it lights up. And he had cancer everywhere. He was a 25 out of, I think 30 is like the highest.
Wow.
So that was 25 cancer sites.
Wow.
And his bone marrow had like 70 to 80% involvement.
Oh.
He was in really bad shape, and we would have probably ended up there anyway at that point. So immediately, I think within 24 hours, he started chemotherapy. They told us from the beginning that with neuroblastoma, they hit it hard. They throw everything at it because if you relapse, the prognosis is not good.
Yeah.
So, they really try to get it the first time and get it all. So the kids, they have to go through every treatment, that you've ever heard of for cancer when they have neuroblastoma. And it's back to back to back to back to back, The only breaks are for their counts to come back up in between, being neutropenic. And
yeah.
So it's a hard road for these kids. So he started chemo. He did several rounds of chemo. Immediately almost we could see the tumor shrinking, like visually we could see his eye getting better and things. So that was reassuring. He started to come back to himself quickly. We were in the hospital, I think, for a couple of weeks that first time. And he really just improved by the time we left a lot. So that was encouraging.
Well, and I loved hearing, before we started talking about the cancer, we were talking all about his personality, and his personality stayed Persy.
That's right.
Throughout. He had a bad few weeks before the diagnosis and when treatment started, but then you sort of got your Persy back.
That's right.
Yeah.
Even I think that night, I remember him looking at Ryan and I, and we were crying. We just heard our son had cancer. And he said, "No crying, Mama. No crying, Dada. Be happy."
Yeah.
And that's just how he was. Just be happy. Don't cry. That was
so sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's the one that got us through, besides God, of course. Persy got us through all of it. He was our example from the beginning to the end, and still is. I don't know how much of his personality came because of his circumstance or how much was just, he definitely was who he was, like you said, all the way through. But at that point, at 2.5, he was a little bit wild, and he fought cancer for almost 2 years. So he grew up a lot in that time.
Sure. Yeah.
They grow so much from 2.5 to 4.
Yeah.
So his personality developed so much, and he was always just easy. He went with it. No, he didn't want to do everything. He didn't like everything, but he would always end up coming around and just doing it with such a good attitude and a smile. And He loved the hospital. He always wanted to go to the hospital.
I bet he was a favorite among the nurses there.
Yeah, I guess he loved people, right? So he loved the attention. He loved to talk to people, teach him about the Greek alphabet and everything else. So, he was just special that way. But he showed improvement, and we got to the point where I think so he did chemotherapy several rounds. He did MIBG therapy, which is where they like do that same radiation, but they do a higher dose so it hopefully kills the cancer when it is absorbed by the neuroblastoma. He did that. So at that point he was radioactive and like we couldn't go near him. That was crazy. He had surgery to remove the primary tumor.
Mhm.
And we found out after that his kidney was nicked during the surgery, which was very disappointing. And so at that point, he was functioning with one kidney that was doing the work of both and still having to do all these, chemos and things that are hard on the organs. And a lot of them are hard on the kidneys. So, we were coming up to a point in his treatment where we could keep going with the protocol, which is what every hospital in the country pretty much does. It's through the COG,
Yeah.
what does it stand for? Cancer.
Oh, I don't remember now, but I know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we could stay with that, which would mean he was coming up to the point of having to do these autologous stem cell transplants where they give them like really, really high lethal doses of chemo and then rescue them with their own stem cells. And I mean, children have been known not to make it through that. We were really worried about him with one kidney going through all that. And we had been the whole time getting a second opinion from Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York. And praying about it a lot. And at this point, we decided to kind of move his treatment up there and not do the autologous stem cell transplants, but go up there and do immunotherapy with like a low dose chemo instead, which they had seen good results with, especially with kids that were kind of responding like Persy was. There's all these other things. I don't even remember them all, but all the other little, mutations and things that he had, that makes him different than other kids. So they're all different.
Right.
But yeah, so we went up there and at that point he had done like one more chemo, an extra chemo at the end, which cleared his bone marrow. So from 70 to 80% involvement to clear bone marrow.
Wow.
And his Curie score went from 25 to a 1 at this point. And the only place that was still lighting up was his clavicle.
Wow.
So he was in a really, really good place. And he was, living life, loving it.
Yeah.
And we always had good times because kids are just so resilient, I think. He was always able to bounce back and, we tried to make life as normal as possible when we weren't in treatment. But at this point, it was different because we had to be traveling up to New York a lot from Florida, which meant we couldn't bring Kepler with us most of the time. It just wouldn't have been fair, to anyone. So that was hard, having the boys separated. But we tried to, bring him whenever we were home, going to clinic and things like that, to have the boys together as much as possible, which I'm really grateful that we did. But he did radiation up in New York. He started immunotherapy and he was still doing well for a while. And then in January of 2023, he relapsed. And I can't remember, but, he had a few more spots now. And this was probably, we don't know.
So this was just on was he symptomatic or was this just on a scan?
Just on a scan at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But by March, his legs, he was starting to have leg pain. So January, the scan showed that it was coming back a little. We switched to a different immunotherapy. I think we did another round of chemo actually and switched to a different immunotherapy. And we're doing that. And then in March, he started to have leg pain, which I was trying so hard to make be, some, like nerve pain from the immunotherapy or whatever. But, deep down.
Yeah. You just didn't want it to be cancer pain. Yeah.
Yeah. Deep down, I think I knew. So that kind of is how it continued. In July, he relapsed again, just meaning he had more spots. He had kind of like stabilized there. He was like kind of the same. And then it was like more spots again in July. So at that point, like I probably should have known that was like, I don't know what I should have known, but
Yeah.
I didn't.
I don't think you can let yourself go there though, right? I think
I
that's very
couldn't.
right. I think it's
Yeah.
almost impossible to do that. And how can you then continue to look at your precious boy every day and think, it's hopeless? You can't.
No.
You can't.
No. And the doctors never said that either, which I'm grateful for, even though part of me wishes they'd been a little more honest. I go back and forth with that. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I feel like I was very in the dark. Like they weren't saying like we're out of treatment options kind of thing. And this is like a last ditch effort or this is going to give him a little more time, but that's it. And I think that's where we were, but
Mhm.
nobody said that.
Yeah.
So he did another MIBG therapy, which probably did give us more time, but at the same time, it was hard because we couldn't be like right up next to him all the time for like at least several days while he was like radioactive, which I know sounds crazy, but that's what they do, these kiddos to,
Yeah. Right?
cancer and monster. So like I didn't get to sleep in the hospital bed with him like I normally would. We just curl up together in there, and I had to be across the room, and just I missed out on some time. But then I try to think, well, probably got more time because he had that treatment. So
Yeah.
it's hard to know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then he did a little more radiation too. And I guess that was really like just buying us some time, like kind of so he wouldn't be in so much pain, I guess,
Right.
because his
Right.
leg pain was getting worse. He wasn't really walking anymore. He would hobble around a little. He would push himself and say, I'm a little old lady. He was so funny. But, he couldn't, it was getting worse. But like I said, I was in denial. So then we snuck in a little quick few day like beach trip with some of my best friends from high school and their kids who are all about the same age. And I'm so grateful that we did that because I realized we had not taken a family vacation since before Persy was diagnosed.
Oh,
I think we had for one night like gone to Chattanooga to let him ride Thomas the train for his birthday, but that was it. And other than that, we hadn't done anything. So I'm grateful
mhm.
that we did it. I wish in a way I had realized a little bit where we were at because I have regrets like not getting a family photo and just little things like that I wish I had when like he was feeling good still.
Yeah.
I don't really have any good family photos of us, from toward the end of his life. And so that's really hard. So we went on the beach trip and we pretty much flew to New York right after we got back from that for scans again. And we brought Kepler with us. And my husband had taken Persy to get the scans. And I had taken Kep, his little brother, to go buy shoes because we had left the house with no shoes for the boys because we had put them in the car like in their PJs early. And anyway,
Yeah.
they had no shoes.
I've done that. No, yeah. Uh-huh.
Bought them each a new pair of shoes. And it's an ironic, I think, little piece of the story just because Persy never really got to wear those shoes. He wore them, I think, once and he didn't walk in them. So now his little brother wears them. But anyway, so we bought the shoes. We went to the hospital and Persy had finished his scans and the doctor wanted to talk to my husband or wanted to talk to us. And so my husband went back to talk to him while I stayed out with the boys. And I should have known what he was talking about there, but I think I thought he was just talking about like what we're going to do next. I don't
Yeah.
know what I thought.
Sure.
The meeting was taking forever and I remember I was getting so frustrated. I was calling my husband over and over. He wouldn't answer. The boys were getting all antsy and Persy was still coming off the anesthesia and like a little cranky. And I was just standing there in the hospital, like trying to keep them happy. And anyway,
Yeah. I'm wondering what the heck was going on.
now I know why. Well, then shortly after that, I knew why it was taking so long because he was giving him the bad news that, Persy was past the point of medical intervention and that we should go home and put him on hospice. And that he had maybe 3 weeks to live.
Wow.
And I was shocked.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the whole time I had thought it's just going to be a longer journey.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do more treatment. He's going to have to fight this for longer, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there. And at this point, it was like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
And I just remember walking through the streets of Manhattan back to the hotel, pushing the boys in the stroller with my husband. And we just kept like stopping in the middle of the street and like just huddling on the ground together, just sobbing. And like people must have just thought we were crazy. People are just walking by. And I mean, that's really all I remember. It was just a blur.
Yeah.
And we got home. We went to clinic and pretty much said goodbye to everybody, which was weird and awful, and went home on hospice. And that time is really hard for me to think about. It's like I think about it a lot
Yeah.
and I don't want to, but hospice was really hard because, he wasn't himself.
Right.
He couldn't be. He was on steroids and painkiller, morphine. I mean, and he was just not him. And it was just hard knowing that this was the best it was ever, like the most I was going to have of him.
Yeah.
And he was just slowly going to dwindle.
Right. Exactly. And when you think, okay, tomorrow's probably going to be worse than today.
Probably worse.
And the next day will probably be worse yet. I mean, that's hard to live that.
But it's also like all I have left.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly.
But you don't want it to be over.
So I would like just stay right next to him and like try to like soak him up. But like,
yeah,
he couldn't really interact. And so I don't know. It was very, very hard.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
And it was about 3 weeks exactly. And before he went to heaven. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I know there's such differences in like, when you lose your child suddenly and a situation like this, but both of them are shocking.
Yes.
There's like, I think there's a difference between shock and surprise. I wasn't surprised by his death, but I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
I still believed in his earthly healing all the way. I mean, even after he died, like I remember standing there praying like, God, I know you can bring him back. You can do it.
Yeah.
I believed like it was possible, but it's like I couldn't accept the alternative.
Right. And I was just going to say that as you were talking too about how, obviously that hospice time, you knew it was coming. Those 3 weeks, you knew it was coming. But then when it comes, you realize I didn't actually know what this was going to be like. This is really not what I thought. Right. So you can't be ready.
No.
So, I mean, I love exactly how you put that you were shocked but not surprised. I've never heard anyone say it that way, and I think that is 100% right. So it wasn't surprising, obviously, that he died. We knew he was going to die. You knew he was going to die, but it's still this shock to the system because you can't actually wrap your head around the fact that he is not going to be there.
That's right.
That this life isn't going to continue like this, and it's going to completely change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like just the void, of like their voice and their presence and just, doing everything.
Right.
Like being a caretaker and just
right.
everything.
That's what I was thinking too. I mean, the last almost 2 years of his life had been very focused on doing his treatments, right? And going to the hospital and going to the clinic and doing all of these different medical things. And then suddenly that's gone too. So it's just everything is so different.
Yeah. And ironic because it's like everything that I hated. Like I used to complain about like having to go to New York and be stuck there and, be stuck in the hospital. And after it was like, gosh, I miss New York. I miss the hospital. I miss everything.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Because it's him.
Things that you never thought you'd miss in a million years.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about your grief journey and how that's been.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I guess I'm coming up on 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Which I think I was like you, and I've heard you say, that like around the 6 to 8 month mark, it was like the numbness started to wear off a little. And I think, well, right in the beginning, like, so during hospice, people were coming in to visit all the time. And my husband has some family friends who had lost both of their sons in a plane crash, actually, and went on to have 2 more later, but he'd known them their whole life since they'd lost those kids pretty much and grew up with the other boys and stuff. And so they had come by. He also had another friend from work who had lost a daughter. And both of these had happened like 20 to 30 years ago, I think. And they'd come, in and out of the house along with others. And I know he had mentioned to me, like, if you want to talk to them. And I just remember thinking, like, there's no way I'm going to be talking to some people who've lost a child. And my child's right there on the couch still. Like, he's alive. He's here.
Yeah, right.
Like, I wasn't ready for that, but as soon as Persy went to heaven, I was like, can we call them and have them come over? Because I need to talk to them right away.
Right.
Like, I needed to know that I was going to get through this, that I could, and how, and just all the things. So that was really what made me realize that I needed to be around people that got it.
Yeah.
And God led me to the While We're Waiting Facebook group, actually, which led me to your podcast, which just really changed everything and made me feel like connected to this community of people who got it. And then obviously joining Starlight, that, it's all connected to me, like in the very beginning. And I just don't know where I'd be without all that. I think everyone's different, but I can't imagine a parent that's lost a child that wouldn't feel some comfort in being around others who have lost a child.
Yeah.
So,
well, you feel like you can be yourself a little bit, and it's hard to be yourself, your new self, this grieving self, around people who've known you forever, because you're not the same, and it's just a challenge, right? And you just don't know, how much of a mask do I put up? How much do I really let them see? But when you're in a group with other bereaved parents, you're like, oh, they can see everything. It's okay. Right?
It's like you don't want to be a drag on other people, but you're not a drag on
no, right.
on the other bereaved parents.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
You're not going to drag somebody else down because we're all just kind of down in the pit.
We're in the same place.
We're all in the same place.
Right.
And then too, you can, laugh and smile too. I mean, I talked about, like, as we're going to start this podcast today. You looked at me and I looked at you, and we had the biggest smiles on our faces because we were going to get to talk about our boys. And I was going to get to hear about Persy for a whole hour. And I'm smiling bigger than anything. And I think the average person would think that was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
And I might have before too.
I'm going to have an hour, and we're going to talk about your child who has died, and we're smiling.
Yeah.
And it's a sad story. And anyway, I just think as a bereaved community, we can understand that it's a gift to be able to tell our stories and share with other people and let, hundreds or thousands of people hear all about Persy. And that makes you a proud mama, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And even though it's sad, and even though you cry, and even though I cry, I still cry a lot of days. I'm 6 years out. I still cry a lot of days. And that's okay.
Yeah, I find that refreshing, actually.
And again, like you said, we're not letting anybody else down. I don't cry too much at work. I can't say I don't cry at work, because I do. I cried. I'm in this Mahjong group, Mahjong, the tile game. Anyway, I'm in this Mahjong group.
One of my friends does that too.
What? Who does it? You do?
One of my good friends does that, and we were all laughing at her. We're like, "How old are you?" I didn't know it was a.
I know. So I'm playing Mahjong. Anyway, I was playing, and somebody it was at another table, and they were talking about how kids are mean, and I said, yeah, kids can be mean. And especially because her daughter was super, super nice. And I said, it's really can be easy for kids to be mean to other kids who are always nice. Like, it was really easy for kids to be mean to Andy because he was so quick to forgive and always just happy. And I think I've told this story before. There's this kid in his class. His name was Jack, and Jack was always a jerk to him. But like Jack would have a day where Jack was nice to Andy, and Andy would come home and go, I think Jack's a nice kid. And I would want to say to him, which I never did, but I would want to say, dude, Jack is a jerk. Jack has been a jerk. Let's just face the fact that Jack is a jerk. But I'd be like, oh, that's nice, Andy. I'm glad it was great, But when Andy died, some of these same kids who had been mean are there now at his funeral. It made his best friend so mad because he's like, how can you be mean to him on and off for so many years and then just show up like you were his best friend? You weren't. And so anyway, so here I am crying this week in Mahjong over this, and then they're all like, oh my gosh, and like, I'm trying to,
comfort you,
be okay with me and help me get myself back together. It just still happens. It just like little things like that still just will get to me. I just start thinking about him and just missing that sweet spirit. And, it's just not going to change. But yet, if I tell that story to you and you see me crying and you're not like now all panicky trying to cheer me up.
Right.
You're like, you just had a grief moment. That's okay.
Right.
We can have our grief moment together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of being in community.
Yes.
With other grieving people.
And the insights like I get from the other people who are going through the same stuff I'm going through, like that's invaluable. Like sometimes it's something that I probably should have thought of, but like I haven't, heard it put that way, or it's just helpful to have insights from other people that get it, I think.
And I love to, obviously we do this via Zoom, so everybody just sees each other on a screen. But what I love though is seeing all the head nodding that ends up happening when someone opens up and talks, right?
I'm a big nodder.
Yeah, right. But you see that going around the room like, yeah, we're all feeling it. We're all there with you. We all understand that. And some people contribute more than other people, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, you can sit in a group and absorb and not say a word. And that does not mean that you're not getting a lot out of it.
You're probably getting the most out of it.
You might be. You might be getting the most out of it.
When I'm quiet, I get more than when I'm talking.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Although, please don't feel that way, and now don't say anything in group.
Oh, yeah.
Then I'll feel like, oh. I was telling someone, I used to, when I first started leading these support groups, I used to feel this tremendous pressure. Like I had to make everyone feel comfortable enough to share, right? If they weren't talking, then somehow I was doing something wrong, and I wasn't making them, I wasn't making it an open enough environment that they feel like they could share. And then I realized, like, no, I mean, it's not. It's people have different opportunities. People need different things. Sometimes you can sit there. I think about the first support group that I went to at Starlight. It was in person. I don't know that I said anything.
Yeah.
I don't know that I said a thing. I remember sitting and crying and kept on thinking in my head, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. He's not really dead. You're not one of these people. I remember that thought going through my mind again and again. And I think Eric talked, but I let Eric talk for me. I mean, I didn't say anything. And I eventually did, but it took a while, and that's okay. I think I got just as much out of those early groups of not saying anything,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You needed that time to listen before you could.
And to process.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe I'm just processing.
And it was so early too.
Right. That was early. I was only 3 weeks in. And I mean, in as much as my mind was saying, this isn't you, you're not one of these people, the other part of me was saying, but yes, you are one of these people. And these are your new people.
Now you are.
Right? These are your people. And that's funny because I went from totally not wanting to be one of these people to, oh my word, you're my people.
Right. Exactly.
Like now.
I feel like that's exactly what happened to me too, honestly.
Like, yes, like you are my people and this is who I want to spend time with. Now I prefer to spend time with my other, friends who are grieving parents. I just feel more comfortable with them. because
Right.
you're my people. I tell stories at work about friends of mine, and like people would talk about their neighbor and they live states away, right? Because they're my people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do want to talk too about you facing this kind of 18-month time period too, because I know for me, those were some of the hardest times for me. So I talk about at 6 months, I felt like the numbness is starting to wear off. People start to not be there quite as much as they were. But 18 months felt like another big thing for me because I felt like, oh my word, I'm closer to 2 years than I am to one now. It just was a hard time. So I'm saying that to you. So if you feel like this is a particularly hard time, it is.
Yeah.
I think it is. It was for me anyway.
I've definitely noticed an increase in my, I don't know. It's like they say it comes in waves, and it does, but I'm like on a wave that feels like a pretty big wave right now that's
Yeah.
still, you know,
Yeah.
going over the edge.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah. I listened to a bunch of episodes when I was having the 5-year anniversary of the podcast. I listened to myself, going through, and I listened to how I sounded there was just one I was listening to, and I looked at the date and I was like, yep, that's when I was 18 months. And I could hear it. I could hear it in my voice, how strained it was, how stressful it was, just how things were.
yeah.
It's interesting too. I had just had a dad email me, very, very long email to me, and he said he like binge listened to 5.5 years of podcasts, well, 5 years in a short period of time, and I hadn't had anyone tell me this. He said it was very encouraging to him to hear my change because I just seemed stronger these later episodes than I did, those earlier ones.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
funny because I don't know that, and I didn't even know it until I really went back and started listening, and then I could hear the difference, and then I appreciated what he said, and he said now he can obviously just listen 1 week at a time, just like everybody else, but it gave him a lot of hope that a time ahead from now, not right now for him, but a time down the road, he is going to feel stronger. And
Right.
you can still be vulnerable and you can still cry, just like I still cry all the time.
I was about to say, and you still cry in most episodes. So
I still cry almost every episode.
that's very comforting for me because, like, I know my husband and I talk about it. Like, it's not like, I know you told that story about your pain isn't what ties you to them, but it also does, we do know that our tears are like our love for them. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to ever really stop.
Right. And you don't want your grief to stop because your grief is really a manifestation of your love. You just don't want it to always feel maybe quite as sharp and quite as heavy.
Right.
And I think that's what it is that it's not as heavy all the time. And there is hope that things do get better over time. So that's, encouragement I can give you, certainly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely seen it from you, Marcy. So
Well, and I want you wanted to talk about some advice from your husband, I think, too, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the very beginning, it's like you can't see straight and you don't know how to go on. So I just thought back to what things kind of helped me to get through, especially those early days, but that continue to help me get through every day. And I think at the beginning, you're waking up every day and it's like you're losing them all over again every day.
Right.
And
Oh, right. Uh-huh.
it's just very hard to put one foot in front of the other. But my husband had said a couple of things to me right at the very beginning that really, really helped me. One thing that he told me was that our faith is our path back to Persy. And Jesus is our path back to Persy. And that was really, really helpful for me because I think it's easy to turn away,
Yes.
when you're questioning so much, and it's okay to question. But that pointed me toward Jesus and toward my faith and made me realize that if I want to see Persy again, then I need to hold tight to
Right.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the very beginning, that's like all I could do, and maybe I couldn't even pray anymore. Maybe I didn't know what to do, but I could hold on.
Uh-huh.
So that was really helpful. And the other thing he said, and, he's a smart guy, but I have a feeling, he was getting some little whispers from the Holy Spirit because he doesn't even know where these things come from. But he told me something else that I think I've heard on your podcast, but every day we're one step closer
Yeah.
to Persy. And that it can feel the opposite because every day, you're a day farther from the last time you heard their voice and touched them and,
Yeah.
all of it. Gave him a hug and a kiss. So to kind of turn it around to I'm one day closer every day was really helpful for me for moving forward.
It is for me as well. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes he would say, like, I can only do one more. I can only do one more day. Don't make me do more than that. I can only do one. And I'd say, or me too. Let's just get through this one day. And we'd get through it. And then the next day we'd do one more. So, that whole one step at a time thing, I think. But faith has been really like everything for me. And that's why Starlight's been so wonderful because it does have that Christian component, which I really appreciate. And something that I think is important is, so right after Persy passed, actually, there was a movie that came out that my husband encouraged us to go see, and it was called After Death. And I recommend it to anybody, but it's about near-death experiences. And I mean, we talked about how after that movie, like, it didn't really change anything for us in the sense of we already know that heaven exists and that Persy is there and that we will be there someday. But it was helpful in a way that I think was kind of unexpected because we were surprised when we watched the movie that there was a bereaved mother in the movie and in the documentary, and she had an NDE and then lost her son years later, I think, or it was after. And it was just so interesting to see because, she said, like, it didn't take away any of her missing her son or any of her pain to know that heaven existed or that he was there. Or, I mean, she basically saw heaven, in her near-death experience. She, is the closest you could get to that. And then she still had all the pain of losing him. It didn't shield her at all. So I just think that's so important because a lot of times people think, oh, well, they're in heaven, you're going to see him again.
He's in a better place. You should be okay. Right. Yeah.
Right. But I still don't get my earthly life with him.
Yeah.
Which I am getting with my other boys, God willing. But I'm never going to get that with Persy. And so I'll get heaven with all my kids, but I won't get the earthly life with Persy. And that's just not good enough. So
No.
I'm going to be sad. I'm going to miss him and I'm going to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I still believe and I still have faith. So I think those things it's important to know that they're not exclusive,
No, absolutely. And you know what? When you said, Jesus is the path back to Persy and faith is the path back to Persy, the image that came to my mind was just an image of Jesus with Persy standing on one side and Andy standing on the other. And us just going on that path, right? Because going down that one path, our path of faith, our path to Jesus, will bring us back to our boys. And I just imagine them standing right beside Jesus right now.
That's right. Me too. And my little boy Kepler would say they're all gold because he says everything in heaven is gold.
So so they're gold. Okay.
I picture them with gold all around them.
Well, that just enhanced my picture a little bit more. Thank you for that, Kepler. All right. And thank you so much, Britt, for sharing Persy with us today. Just so beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Marcy.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful and would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can type Andy's Mom, one word, to the number 53555. This provides a link to GiveButter, which allows donations through PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay, or credit cards. GiveButter will provide a receipt of your tax-deductible donation. Or you can visit the donation page at andysmom.com/donate. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 and can receive donations through Thrivent Financial and Benevity. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com or on the Instagram or Facebook Always Andy's Mom accounts. Sign up for the email list to get weekly episode links as well as pictures of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.